The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the vast dry land. The lone rancher stood in the doorway of his modest cabin, his eyes scanning the endless stretch of his property. For years he had worked the land alone, no family, no friends, just the open space, the cattle, and the never-ending chores. He liked it that way. There was peace in solitude, and he found comfort in the rhythm of his work. The ranch was all he needed. This rancher wasn't a man who sought out company or wanted to build a life surrounded by people. His friends were few, and his interactions with the townsfolk were limited to brief exchanges when he needed supplies or when the occasional cattle drive passed through. He was content with his quiet life, his routine, and the predictable days that stretched ahead of him. But one morning, something unexpected arrived that would change everything. The letter came on a dusty afternoon. It was sealed with a dark wax, the markings on it unfamiliar. The rancher held it in his hands, turning it over carefully, wondering who could have sent it. There was no return address, only a name. Chief Dakota. The name meant little to him. Perhaps it was some matter of land or cattle trade, something routine he would have to deal with quickly, and then go back to his peaceful life. With a curious frown, he tore open the envelope and began to read. Dear Rancher, it is with respect that I inform you of the passing of Chief Dakota of the Apache people. As his final wish, he has chosen you as the recipient of his most precious possessions, his two wives, Maya and Naya. This inheritance is not one to be taken lightly, for it is rooted in the old ways of our people. You are now their husband and protector. They await your arrival at our lands. The rancher read the letter twice, unsure whether what he was reading was real. It didn't make sense. He knew nothing of this Apache chief or the women he had married. He had no ties to the Apache people, and they certainly had no ties to him. The idea that this chief had left him his wives was baffling, and yet the letter seemed genuine. The days passed, and the rancher's curiosity began to grow. He debated going to Apache land. The thought of being married to two women, especially ones he didn't know, seemed strange. But he couldn't ignore the letter. It was official and it demanded a response. So after much hesitation, he saddled his horse and set out toward the Apache lands. He didn't know what to expect, but the promise of an answer kept him moving. As he rode, the rancher thought about what awaited him. What kind of women were these? How did he fit into their world? Would they accept him as their husband? Or would they resent the life that had been thrust upon them? His mind was full of questions, and his heart was heavy with uncertainty. He was a man of action, not words, and the thought of navigating this strange new world with the two wives of a powerful Apache chief filled him with anxiety. When he arrived, the first thing he noticed was the silence. The Apache people were always calm and composed, but there was something deeper in the air now. A sense of respect, perhaps, or maybe it was the weight of tradition that hung in the atmosphere. The rancher was led to a large dwelling where the two women awaited him. Maya was the first to speak. She was tall, with dark, intelligent eyes that held a quiet strength. Her features were soft but determined, and she carried herself with a grace that suggested she was used to being a leader among her people. She didn't smile, but her gaze was steady as she studied the rancher. She didn't seem angry or disappointed, only curious about the man who had come to inherit her. Naya, on the other hand, was more reserved. She had an air of mystery about her. Her long black hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall, and her eyes, though gentle, seemed to hold many untold stories. She didn't say much, but her presence was commanding, as if she were the backbone of their lives. The rancher stood awkwardly before them, unsure how to proceed. I didn't ask for this, he stammered. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Maya raised an eyebrow. And yet here you are. I didn't know the chief. I don't know you. I don't know how this all works, the rancher continued. I'm not prepared for this. I'm not a man of words or culture. I work my land. That's all I know. Naya finally spoke, her voice soft yet firm. Your inheritance is not one of your choosing. But it is yours now. Whether you are prepared or not, we are your responsibility. The rancher swallowed hard, trying to process what was happening. It felt like the weight of the world was pressing down on him, and he had no idea how to carry it. He had spent his entire life working alone, doing things his way. And now here were two women, two beautiful women, who were a part of a culture he didn't understand, a world he wasn't sure he belonged in. For the next few days, The rancher tried to learn as much as he could about the Apache ways. Maya was willing to teach him, though her lessons were often blunt. "You will never be one of us," she told him one evening as they sat by the fire. "But you must learn to respect our ways if you are to be our husband." Naya, however, kept to herself more, observing the rancher from a distance. She said little, but when she did speak, her words were wise and thoughtful. "There is more to life than work and land," she told him one day. "You must learn to listen to the heart as well." The rancher was slowly coming to understand that this inheritance, though unexpected, was not a burden. It was a challenge, but it was also an opportunity to build something new, a new life that he had never imagined. Slowly he began to see Maya and Naya not as strangers or burdens, but as partners, and though it was a long road ahead, he began to feel the stirrings of something he hadn't known he wanted: connection. The rancher's life had taken an unexpected turn, one he could not have foreseen, and as the days turned into weeks, he realized that this inheritance, this strange twist of fate, was changing him in ways he couldn't yet understand. But one thing was certain: he would never be the same again. The quiet life he had once known was slipping away, replaced by a future he could never have imagined. And so, as the sun began to set on another day, the rancher found himself standing in a new world, one that was both frightening and full of promise. He wasn't alone anymore, and somehow that made all the difference. The days that followed the rancher's arrival at the Apache village were full of change. At first, everything seemed strange and unfamiliar to him. The customs, the way of life, and even the food were different, but he was determined to learn. The Apache people had always been known for their strength and wisdom, and though he felt like an outsider, he wanted to understand their ways. Maya, the younger wife, took on the responsibility of teaching him the most basic customs. She showed him how to sit in a circle with the Apache, how to share meals, and how to respect the elders. It wasn't always easy for the rancher, who was used to living alone and making his own rules. But he began to see the beauty in the way the Apache lived, how every action was rooted in respect for the earth, for each other, and for the past. There was a deep sense of community that the rancher had never known. Maya, too, was beginning to soften. At first she had seen him only as the man who had inherited their lives. He was the one who had taken the place of their late husband, Chief Dakota, a man they had both loved and respected. But over time she started to notice something different about him. The rancher may not have known their ways, but he was willing to try. He listened when they spoke, and he worked hard to learn. He was kind, patient, and he didn't rush anything. One evening, after the day's work was done, the rancher and Maya sat by the fire. The flames flickered in the darkness, casting a soft glow on their faces. Maya was silent for a while, lost in her thoughts. She had never imagined that her life would take this turn. But as she looked at the rancher, she saw something in him, a quiet strength that reminded her of Chief Dakota, the man who had led their people with wisdom and love. "You're not like what I expected," Maya said softly. "When I first saw you, I thought you would try to take control. But you haven't. You've listened, and that is more than most men would do." The rancher looked at her, surprised by her words. "I'm not here to control anyone. I just want to learn," he replied. Maya nodded, a slight smile playing on her lips. "And you have. I see that now." The rancher felt a sense of pride at her words. He had started to understand that this wasn't about ownership or tradition. It was about connection. He didn't have to be the chief to earn respect. He could earn it by simply being present, by listening, and by learning. But it wasn't just Maya who was beginning to change. Naya, the older wife, had been more distant from the rancher. She had always been the one who kept her emotions hidden, who carried herself with an air of wisdom that commanded respect. She didn't speak much, but when she did, it was always with purpose. The rancher admired her, but he also feared her. He knew that Naya saw right through him, and that made him uncomfortable. However, as the days passed, the rancher began to notice that Naya was warming to him as well. She would speak to him in quiet moments, offering pieces of advice, and sometimes she would just sit with him in silence, her presence a calming influence. One afternoon, as the rancher worked with the cattle, Naya approached him. Her movements were slow, deliberate, and she had an air of quiet authority that made him stop what he was doing. She stood by his side for a moment, watching him work. Before speaking, "You are not like the others," she said, her voice low and steady. The rancher looked at her, unsure of what she meant. "The others?" he asked, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "Men," she replied simply, They come with pride, with ego. You come with humility. That is why you are learning. The rancher nodded slowly. I've never had a family before, he said. It's different. But I'm trying. Naya studied him for a long time before responding. You are trying, she agreed. And that is all any of us can do. The world is full of people who only take, but you are learning to give. The rancher felt a warmth spread through him at her words. He had never thought of himself as someone who could give much. He had always been focused on survival. But now, as he learned from Maya and Naya, he realized that giving didn't always mean material things. Sometimes it was about sharing a moment, listening, or simply being there. In the weeks that followed, the rancher's life began to take shape in a way he had never expected. He was no longer just a man on a ranch. He was part of something greater. He had 2 wives who had their own pasts, their own histories, but who were now sharing their lives with him. He was no longer a stranger to them. They were beginning to see him as a man who was willing to share their burdens and joys. Maya and Naya, too, had started to find their place in his life. The 3 of them worked together, each contributing in their own way. The rancher did his part by caring for the land and the animals, while Maya and Naya helped with the tasks that came with their way of life. Though their roles were different, they found a rhythm that worked for them. One evening, as they sat together in the quiet of the ranch, Maya turned to the rancher. I never thought this would be how my life would turn out, she said, her voice soft. The rancher looked at her, a slight smile on his face. None of us did, he replied. But here we are, and we'll make it work. Naya, sitting beside them, looked at the rancher with quiet approval. You have come a long way, she said. You are no longer a stranger to us. The rancher felt a deep sense of gratitude in that moment. He had come to Apache land as an outsider, unsure of what to expect. But now he was part of something. He had found a new family, a new life. And even though it was different from everything he had known, it was beginning to feel like home. As the fire crackled beside them, the rancher realized that sometimes life had a way of bringing unexpected changes. But in the end, those changes could lead to something beautiful, something that could change everything. And as he sat with Maya and Naya, he knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in his life. The future, once uncertain, now seemed full of possibilities. And for the first time in years, the rancher didn't feel so alone.